The story of the Merck family is one of the most remarkable examples of scientific wealth creation in modern history. Unlike many wealthy dynasties that built fortunes through banking, real estate, or natural resources, the Mercks built their fortune through chemistry, medicine, and industrial science. Their journey began more than 350 years ago, and incredibly, the family still remains influential in global healthcare today. The origins of the Merck family wealth trace back to 1668 in Darmstadt, Germany, when Friedrich Jacob Merck acquired a small pharmacy known as the Angel Pharmacy. At that time, pharmacies were very different from what we think of today. Apothecaries were among the few people in society who understood chemistry, medicinal plants, and the preparation of medicines. They were part scientist, part chemist, and part physician. For generations, the family operated this pharmacy business, but the real turning point came in the 19th century. A descendant named Heinrich Emanuel Merck realized that medicine and chemistry were entering a new industrial age. Scientists and physicians increasingly needed purified chemicals, standardized medicines, and laboratory reagents. Before industrial chemistry, many medicines were inconsistent in quality and potency. Merck saw the opportunity to industrialize pharmaceutical chemistry and build reliable large-scale production. This was a transformational insight. Instead of remaining a local pharmacy, the company evolved into one of Europe's first major pharmaceutical and chemical manufacturers. What made the Mercks unusual was that they increasingly became a scientific family as much as a business family. Across generations, descendants were often educated in chemistry, pharmacy, medicine, engineering, or industrial science. In many wealthy dynasties, family members inherit influence simply because of ownership. In the Merck family, credibility was often tied to technical competence and intellectual rigor. The culture emphasized understanding the science behind the business, not merely benefiting from it financially. As industrialization accelerated across Europe, Merck expanded rapidly. Their products reached laboratories, universities, hospitals, and researchers around the world. The company became associated with scientific reliability and pharmaceutical quality. This was important because modern medicine itself was just emerging. The Mercks were not simply selling products, they were participating in the construction of the modern scientific infrastructure. One of the most important strategic decisions in the company's history came in 1891, when the family established a business presence in the United States. That American operation eventually became what we know today as Merck & Co. At the time, it was simply an overseas subsidiary. Nobody could have predicted that this American branch would later become one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Then came World War I, which changed everything. Because Germany and the United States became enemies during the war, the U.S. government confiscated German-owned assets under the Trading with the Enemy Act. The American Merck business was seized and separated permanently from the German parent company. This single geopolitical event created two separate pharmaceutical giants, the German Merck KGaA and the American Merck & Co., which outside the United States is known as MSD. What makes this story extraordinary is that the family survived despite losing control of what later became an enormous American pharmaceutical empire. Many dynasties would have collapsed after such a blow. But the Mercks still possessed the scientific expertise, manufacturing infrastructure, and industrial culture that had built the company in the first place. They rebuilt and adapted. The 20th century was brutal for German industrial families. They endured World War I, hyperinflation, economic collapse, political instability, World War II, and post-war reconstruction. Countless fortunes disappeared. Yet the Mercks survived because their wealth was tied not merely to financial assets, but to scientific capability and industrial relevance. As long as the world needed medicines, chemicals, and scientific tools, the company could continue evolving. Those repeated national crises also shaped the family's culture. German industrial dynasties that survived multiple economic collapses and wars often became highly disciplined, conservative, and long-term oriented. The Mercks increasingly prioritized institutional survival over short-term expansion or personal extravagance. Their mindset became deeply focused on continuity, resilience, and preserving the company for future generations. The family was also known for being relatively private and understated compared to many wealthy dynasties. They were not known for celebrity lifestyles or highly public displays of wealth. Their culture reflected a more restrained German industrial tradition centered on stewardship, duty, technical excellence, and reinvestment into the institution itself. In many ways, the family behaved more like long-term custodians of a scientific institution than a traditional aristocratic dynasty. And evolve they did. Over time, the company expanded far beyond pharmaceuticals into biotechnology tools, specialty chemicals, semiconductor materials, and life science infrastructure. Today, Merck KGaA is not only a healthcare company. It is also deeply involved in electronics materials and advanced scientific research systems. This diversification helped make the business far more resilient than a traditional single-focus pharmaceutical company. Another fascinating aspect of the Merck story is how the family managed its wealth across generations. Most family fortunes disappear within 3 generations. There is an old saying, the first generation builds it, the second maintains it, and the third destroys it. The Mercks largely avoided this fate. One major reason was governance. The family created ownership structures that prevented fragmentation. Rather than endlessly dividing the company among descendants, they centralized control through a family holding structure known as E. Merck KGaA, pronounced A Merck KGaA. Even after the company became publicly traded, the family retained long-term control. This allowed the business to access public capital markets while preserving family influence over strategy and direction. Equally important, the family increasingly relied on professional management. This is one of the defining differences between durable industrial dynasties and collapsing family businesses. The Mercks did not treat the company as a family employment program. Family members were not automatically guaranteed executive positions simply because of their surname. Descendants were often expected to develop genuine expertise, business understanding, and technical literacy before exercising influence inside the organization. This created a culture where the family increasingly acted as long-term stewards rather than day-to-day operators. Professional executives, scientists, engineers, and operators managed the business, while the family focused on governance, continuity, and preserving the institution's long-term direction. This separation between ownership and management also helped reduce many of the internal power struggles that destroy multi-generational dynasties. Unlike many dynasties built around a single commodity or speculative financial asset, the Mercks built institutional scientific infrastructure. Their expertise compounded across generations because chemistry, medicine, biotechnology, and advanced manufacturing became increasingly important to the modern world. The family's wealth was tied to intellectual and industrial capability, not merely ownership of finite assets. Today, the Merck family remains one of the wealthiest industrial families in Germany. Through Merck KGaA, they still control the majority of Merck KGaA. At the same time, daily operations are run by professional executives. The company now operates across life sciences, healthcare, and electronics materials, serving industries ranging from biopharmaceutical manufacturing to semiconductor production. Meanwhile, Merck & Co. evolved separately in the United States into one of the world's largest pharmaceutical firms, developing blockbuster medicines, vaccines, and oncology therapies. Interestingly, although both companies originated from the same family history, the Merck family no longer controls the American company. The lessons from the Merck story are profound. First, enduring wealth is often built on real capability rather than financial engineering. The Mercks built expertise in chemistry, manufacturing, and scientific reliability. Second, long-term success requires adaptation. The family repeatedly reinvented the business as science and technology evolved. Third, governance matters enormously. By separating ownership from day-to-day management, they avoided many of the internal conflicts that destroy family enterprises. Perhaps the biggest lesson is that institutions survive longer than individuals. The Mercks built systems, structures, and culture that extended beyond any one generation. Over time, the company became larger than the family itself. That may be the ultimate reason the Merck dynasty endured for more than 3 centuries, while so many others disappeared.